All right, so we're going to get into the format of these. Is I'm going to spend about half an hour. I know I already spent like 15 minutes here, so I might go a little bit longer than I planned. I'll spend about half an hour kind of giving you the, some teachings on the topic of the day, and then we're going to spend the remainder of the class on Q&A with you. You can ask questions about today's specific topic, or if you want to just ask questions about something that you have going on in your garden, you're welcome to do that. So I'm going to just get into today's topic. If you have a question while I'm speaking, go ahead and raise your hand. You can also put your question into the chat, and I'll try to pay attention to that as well. So container gardening, right? Just to start off, again, I have a lot of, I've seen a lot of people coming into my classes who they send me pictures of their garden, or I'll go consult on a garden, and they have an actual yard, they have soil in the ground, and they're growing in pots, right? And so some people are growing in pots. The reason they're growing in pots, again, is because they believe that their soil is bad. It's worthless and irredeemable. So if you have ground space, there's really no reason that you need to do a container garden. Okay, we're going to have other classes. We're going to talk about how to improve your soil health in the ground. And you're going to understand this over time anyways as you interact with us more. But there's no reason, if you have an actual yard, for you to have a container garden, okay? Any plant that does well in the container can do well in the ground. It's kind of a funny thing, like the soil in the soil in the ground has not been cared for. You put some plants in it, they all die, and then you go and you buy potting soil, which is basically full of all these, potting soil is usually compost and bone meal and fish meal and seaweed, and it's got all this beautiful good stuff in it. We put in a pot, we put our plant in there, the plant does well, and then we think, oh, see, the soil in the ground is bad and the pot is good. Well, you put all this great food in the pot. You could have put it on the ground, put the plant in the ground, and you would have had the same results, and you would be feeding that soil in a way that you could actually build up that soil's health over time. So if you have ground space, there's no reason for you to have a container garden, except for some specific circumstances, which I'm just going to briefly go over here. So if you're a renter, right, and you don't have a permanent residency in the space that you're in, then sure, that's a really great reason to have a container garden, so that when you move, you can take your plants with you. Absolutely. If you're trying to limit the size of a plant, this could be for trees even. If you're trying to limit the size of a tree, you can grow a tree in a fairly large pot and limit its size that way. So that's another reason you might want to have a container garden even though you have ground space. And the last reason would be if you're trying to grow a plant that requires greatly different soil conditions than the soil that's in the ground in your yard. There's a few specific circumstances I'm thinking of. If you're in Southern California, it's very difficult to grow blueberries in the ground. Blueberries require a very acidic soil, and so we can grow when I plant blueberries, I plant them in containers full of peat moss, and that's because blueberries like acidic soil, and peat moss is very acidic and it holds the acidity well. So you can grow blueberries in a pot much better than you can grow them in the ground. So that's basically like the only reasons that I could think of that if you have ground space, you need to have a container garden. If you have a balcony or if you have a patio, then, if you don't have ground space, then of course, you're going to grow in containers. Okay, so that's just a little starting off here. We had two people ask about sun and orientation. So I want to start with that. That's actually a really, really wonderful subject to start with, and it's applicable to everyone, no matter where you are. So I want you all to take a second here. If you have your phone with you, phones now, most phones have a compass app. So if you don't know which direction south is in your yard or on your balcony or patio, I want you to use your phone and find out the direction south. And we're going to stand up and we're going to do an exercise together because I want you to understand how the sun moves. This is going to be really important in terms of you placing your plants. All right, so I'm going to give you a minute. Figure out which direction south is. If you don't know which direction south is, or if you already know which direction south is, just start facing that way. Okay, and we're going to stand up. I'm going to stand up with you. Okay, so figure out, we're going to start. I want you to face south, okay? And I'm just going to face the screen so you can see me. So I'm looking at you like you're south. We do this, and I do this in all my classes. This is fun. Okay, so facing south, okay? And I'm going to ask maybe one or two people, if you feel like you're kind of comfortable with directions, sunrise, sunset, just one or two people, just go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'm gonna ask you to guide us along here. Anyone who wants to volunteer, go ahead. Okay, Sarah Jo and Debs, thank you. Okay, so either of you can answer. I'm just gonna ask some questions here. Which way, if I'm facing south, well, it doesn't matter which way I'm facing, but which direction does the sun rise?
From the west.
Well, it rises in the east.
Rises in the east.
Sun rises in the east.
It rises
Sarah
in
Jo, you already taken my class. You got to know this.
And it
I'm having,
Okay, sun rises in the east, and then during the day, where does it come up?
well, it comes up in different spots during different seasons.
Yes, it does.
And over us, it doesn't take a total east-west. It more or less sets sort of in the southwest where we are.
Okay.
Not very much.
Yeah. Okay, Debs, thank you for getting specific. I'm going to go over the changes. That's a really important part of what this exercise is for. Is everyone here? Is there anyone here who's not in the United States or not in the Northern Hemisphere? Anyone? Okay. Okay, so we're going to have similar sun paths, just depending on what your latitude is. So, we're in, or right now I'm in the Bay Area of California, so I'm kind of in the middle latitudes of the US. Some of you might be more north, some of you might be more south. There's going to be a little bit of a change in the sun's path depending on where you are. I'm going to give you kind of general instructions. And then you'll start to see this once you start paying attention. Okay, so what Debs and Sarah Jo said is the sun rises in the east. That's what we learned in school. Sun rises in the east and it comes up during the day and then it sets in the west. However, that's a simplified version of what the sun actually does. The sun moves north and south throughout the seasons. Okay, so we are in August right now. We're just past the summer, not the equinox, but the summer solstice. Summer solstice. Okay, so summer solstice is the time of the year that the sun's path is the longest, the largest. So we're going to pretend it's exactly summer solstice. Sarah Jo or Deb, can you tell me which direction will the sun rise on the summer solstice?
well, for where I am, the sun is rising, I think it's rising directly in the east. The way I thought I understood it is it comes to the highest point. It's sort of in the more of a full arc. It's
more of a full arc. However, it rises slightly in the northeast. Oh, is this? I'm flipped. You might be seeing me flipped. It rises in the northeast, okay? So in the peak of summer, the sun rises in the northeast. It comes up almost directly overhead, but slightly to the south. And then from that peak, it's gonna set down in the northwest. Okay, so can you guys do that with me? Your left hand is going slightly behind you. Okay,
Yeah.
that's your northeast.
Right. Going up.
It's coming up. It's coming up. The sun's gonna set in the northwest. Okay, depending on your left.
We're losing you.
Yeah, your screen is big. I wasn't sure if that was just me seeing that. But. No, we lost him. He'll be back.
Risha, you're blocked. You're stopped.
His connection may have just gone out.
Oh, hi everyone, this is Evelyn, and I am getting Rishi back online. I think he's having some technical difficulties, but just hang on one moment if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay, I'm here. It looks like I'm here. Can you guys hear me again? No?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. This is gonna happen. Okay, so what I was saying, where I was so in summer, you have this big arc rising in the northeast, coming up high in the south, right, and then setting in the northwest. Okay, and in the winter, the arc is gonna change.
It shifts.
The sun is gonna come up in the. Guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sun is going to come up in the southeast. It's going to come up slightly in front of me in the southeast. It's going to come up kind of low in the sky. And then it's going to set in the southwest. Between those times, the path is going to change according to where you are in the season. Okay? So this is something you can kind of practice. And what you want to kind of work towards is being able to tell where the sun is going to be at what time of the day and what time of the year. All right, and that will help you understand how to place your plants. We generally are going to want to have our taller plants on the north side of our garden, because then they will not cast a shadow on the shorter plants. So shorter plants towards the front on the south side, and taller plants towards the back on the north side. You also want to look around, and this is really important for balcony gardens and patio gardens when you only have one direction, because you want to really make sure that you're using up that maybe if you have like a small window of sunlight, you really want to make sure that window of sunlight is going to be used best. Great thing about a container garden is if you mess up and put a tall plant in the front and it blocks everything else, you just move it around, right? But this will help you just from the beginning, make sure everything is in the right place. Okay, sun path. Yeah, pay attention to any walls, trees. You can also use this, if you have a bigger garden, you can use this to kind of shade plants that need shade in the summer and give them sun when they need it in the winter. Okay, so that's kind of a basic thing that's going to apply to any garden, container garden or not. Now, specifically talking about container gardens, I want to just talk about the different types of materials that we can use for containers. There's quite a few options today, and each one has different characteristics and can be good for different conditions, right? Not necessarily one is good and the other one is bad, but they can all work in different conditions. So just to start off, like the very most common thing would be like a hard plastic pot. Okay, so hard plastic pots, they're fine. Like I wouldn't not use them at all. Of course, they're the cheapest option. The thing with hard plastic pots is that they don't really give a lot of breathing space for the roots, because they're solid and they're plastic. Roots and soil actually need air. So that because they're hard and if you get, the deeper they get, the less air is going to get down in there. That hard plastic kind of limits the oxygen exchange, and you can get a little bit of like rotting or like anaerobic activity is what you would call it. But it's kind of some rotting in the pot, especially if you're overwatering. So in a hard plastic pot, you can use them. The other issue that's going to happen with hard plastic pots, and this is going to be the case for actually most of our pots, is that we'll get this root circling. If you've grown plants in pots, or if you bought plants from a nursery before, you take that plant out of the plastic pot and the roots are all circled up at the bottom. That is a result of the plant not really knowing that it's reached the end of the pot. And so the roots just circle and circle around. If you're growing perennial plants or trees, this is going to be a problem long term. So I don't recommend growing perennial plants, meaning plants that live for more than 1 year, in hard plastic pots. They are okay for annual plants, meaning plants that live for less than 1 year, which are actually most of our vegetables. Most of our vegetables are going to be okay in hard plastic pots. But they'll do better in other materials as well. We have wood. Wood is actually a really great material for containers. Usually when containers are built out of wood, there's slots or slats, and so there's a little bit of gaps for air, and the wood just lets the soil breathe a little bit better. Tend to not get so much root circling, but it does happen. So wood is a decent option. Then we have ceramic. Ceramic, of course, it's beautiful. It's I think the biggest drawback with ceramic, especially when we get to bigger pots, it's really heavy. It can be difficult to move around. In terms of the pot itself, ceramic has a cooling quality, so it actually kind of keeps the potting soil, the root ball of the plant, cool, and it wicks off excess moisture. So those are advantages to ceramic pots. The last option I'm going to talk about, and this is what we use the most at our nursery and what I use in my patio garden, are fabric pots. I don't have an example with me today, but if you've seen me on Instagram, I post about these in my patio quite often. But these are pots made out of a polyester fabric. And the great advantage that a fabric pot gives you is that because it is porous, it's not solid, there is a generous amount of air exchange happening in the potting soil. The other major advantage is that when plants roots grow, and when roots feel air, they actually stop growing. Oh, Sarah Samuel has got an example she's showing of a fabric pot. That's the same exact one that we sell at our nursery. Thank you for showing that, Sarah. So the fabric pot actually prevents root circling completely. And for perennial plants, this is going to be a huge advantage, because if a perennial plant, the roots are going to continue to grow. If we use any other type of pot, the roots would continue to grow and grow, and the plant will be putting its energy into growing those circling roots. In a fabric pot, the roots hit the edge of the pot, they stop growing, and now the plant actually starts putting energy into growing up. It also starts making little root hair, like small roots within the soil of the actual pot. So it actually roots into the pot, the soil in the pot better. And so you have better nutrient uptake, you have better water uptake in a fabric pot. They do tend to dry out quicker. So if you're using a fabric pot, you'll probably need to water it a little bit more often. But what I would say is, and this is the next thing I was going to talk about, always use the largest size pot that you can. Okay, if you're going to have a container garden, rather than having 10 1-gallon pots that each have a lettuce in them, if you can fit a 20-gallon, fit a 30-gallon pot that you can put all 10 of those lettuce plants together in. Right? The bigger that your pot is, the more insulated it's going to be, the less heat the pot is being exposed to, right? The less of the surface area on the sides that it's being exposed to heat and sun. So the pot's going to dry out more slowly. And then, the great thing is, instead of having 10 plants individual from each other, we have 10 plants that are interacting with each other. And so we can actually have what's called companion planting in a bigger pot, right? So in my patio garden right now, I have a pot that has a lime tree in it, a grapevine in it, some garlic chives, and a zucchini, right? And I can grow those all together in one pot, and they're working together. So fit the biggest size pot that you can in your space. Also remember to leave space for yourself. So don't get don't fill the entire balcony up and you can't walk outside. Just whatever's the biggest and most comfortable. Yeah, Carolyn, what I just mentioned, that's all growing in one 30-gallon pot. Okay, so that is what I wanted to say about types of containers. Anyone have any questions about types of containers or anything I mentioned so far? Oh, let me get the participants. All right. Okay, I'm going to keep going then. Okay, so once you've decided, you've done the sun, you've looked at the solar orientation of your yard, you've figured out where your taller plants need to go, you figured out where your smaller plants need to go, you have selected the types of containers that you want to use, so you're using the biggest type of container that you can fit, and now what are you going to fill those containers up with, right? That's another key question. So there are quite a number of different potting soils on the market. I have not tried all of them. There's two brands that I have used. One is Kellogg's and the other one is GNB. Those are actually made by the same company. And I've used both of them. They both seem to work really well. And so you can go with a commercial potting soil if you want to just take it really easy. The one thing I will say about commercial potting soils, when you open up those bags, you'll find that the soil itself is usually quite rough. Okay, meaning you'll see like pieces of wood chips. You'll see the potting soil the materials in the soil have not really decomposed fully. They tend to, because they're made on such a large industrial scale, they can't really compost that potting soil completely. So when you buy a commercial potting soil, it's a good idea to help break that soil down by adding a little bit additional of an organic fertilizer. So this would be like a powdered organic fertilizer, something that is high in nitrogen, okay? Woody materials, they're high in carbon, and things like animal parts, seeds, these are high in nitrogen. When we add these together, we get decomposition. So if you're using a commercial potting soil, add a high nitrogen organic fertilizer. You can do it at a little bit more than whatever the recommended amount is. That will help break down the potting soil more completely and get your plants growing a little bit more quickly. If you don't do this, it'll just delay basically the plant's growth a little bit. So if you can put a few extra dollars into an organic fertilizer, I would highly recommend it. The other piece to kind of improving these commercial potting soils is adding some what I call a soil inoculant. Okay, and a soil inoculant is basically soil from someone else who's been gardening for a long time. Okay, so you're gonna find a friend who's had a garden for a while and hopefully been gardening organically, and where you can see that the soil in their yard is nice and rich. Okay, and what you're doing there is you are introducing the microbes in that rich garden soil into your potting soil, and you really don't need a lot, just about 1 handful per pot. You're going to add that soil inoculant, 1 handful in every pot. That's going to allow that's going to bring those microbes into the pot, and they're going to start eating their way through the pot, and they're going to kind of take over the soil. So these two things, a commercial potting soil plus the organic high nitrogen fertilizer, powdered fertilizer, and a soil inoculant. That'll give you a really good potting soil to start with. The other option I'm going to offer you here, and if you want to do this, you're going to want to write this down right now. I'm offering you a lot here. I'm not offering you notes. Sorry, you got to take your own notes. So if you want to make your own potting soil, pretty simple. This is what we do at our nursery. We make our own potting soil for all of our plants. And you're going to need 4 ingredients, 3 major ones. And these are all usually available at any gardening center. And if you don't find them at the gardening center, try a hydroponic supply. All these marijuana gardening centers, they sell all these products, and they're all over the country now. So the 3 ingredients that you'll need 3 major ingredients. Compost. Okay, so you get a bag of compost. You get coconut fiber. Comes in these compressed bricks. It's just a shell of coconuts. And perlite. Perlite is it's made out of a stone. It's a rock that's kind of heat treated. It's heated up, and then it's like popcorn. You heat that rock up and it kind of blows up. That's what perlite is. It's that white fluffy stuff that you see in all the pots when you go to the nursery. So compost, coconut fiber, perlite, you're going to mix those in equal quantities. Okay, that's going to make the bulk of your potting soil. And the last ingredient you're going to add, again, is the soil inoculant, just 1 handful in every pot of your soil. And this is what we do at the nursery, and works really, really well for us. Okay, any questions on potting soil? I'm seeing some questions in the chat here. What is your opinion on lining your pots with gardening cloth before you add the soil? What do you mean by gardening cloth? I'm not sure what that would be. Yeah, there's a Fox Farm. There's another brand called Fox Farm. They sell gardening soils. They tend to be on Fox Farm tends to be, I believe, on the more expensive side. But that's, it's definitely a quality product. Okay, so then I'm gonna just go on to one more topic here, and then we'll take more questions. So we talked about the containers, we talked about the soil. Now the last thing I'm going to talk about quickly is the water. So in a container garden, pots just dry out more quickly than in-ground gardens do. So in a potted garden, you're going to need to water more often. And I know many of you are probably thinking, how often, they're wanting me to answer, how often should you water, right? That's probably a question everyone's asking. When should I water? When should I water? Every other day, every 3 days, twice a day? How often should I water? Okay, I'm going to repeat this probably in every class. I cannot tell you how often to water, okay? You have to use, we're going to start, gardening is about developing our senses, okay? And our senses are the most important thing in gardening. We need to develop our vision, our smell, sense of smell, our sense of touch. These are really, really important in gardening, okay? And in a container, in any garden, it's very easy to know when to water, okay? You're gonna take this finger and you're gonna stick it into the soil, okay? If there is no water, if your finger feels totally dry when you do that, then that's usually a good time to water, okay? Most of our vegetable plants, their roots are gonna go down about a foot. So if your pot is a foot deep, then you wanna water when those top 6 inches have gotten dry, okay? When you don't wanna keep your soil wet all the time, right? You wanna have this fluctuation in the moistness of the soil. It'll be wet when you water it, then you want to let it dry out. Then it'll be wet when you water it, and then you want to let it dry out a little bit. So let that top 6 inches dry out, then water again, okay? The only exception to this is if you've just put seeds in the ground, or if you've just put small transplants in the ground and their roots are very shallow, then we want to water, as regularly as we need to every day. If it's very hot, maybe twice a day, to keep those seedlings alive. But really we want to, as deep as the roots are, we kind of want to let half of the depth of the root dry out and then water again, and let half of the depth of the root dry out and then water again. So we're getting this fluctuation in moistness of the soil. If you keep the soil moist continuously, you will get fungus, you will get rot, you'll have problems. Luckily, if you use the soil mix that I use, there's a lot of perlite in that mix, and it kind of drains out excess water really well. So it'll be hard to overwater with that soil mix, but still follow my instructions and get a nice wet, dry, wet, dry, wet, dry. Okay, not soggy. I don't want soggy. Don't want anything ever to be soggy. Okay, so that's what I have prepared for you. I wanted to get you started. We're gonna talk about next month. We're gonna be talking about seed starting, and I'll talk about what plants to be starting for the winter next month as well. And I can't remember what we have on the schedule after that, but in the email that we send you, I'll let you know what's on the schedule. So I went a little bit over what I planned for myself, so I'm gonna extend us about 10-15 minutes to take more questions. I'm gonna open it up for questions from all of you right now. So go ahead and either raise your hand. I prefer if you raise your hand and speak to me, but if you want to do it in the chat, that's all right too. Okay, Jacqueline, go ahead.
I was hoping that you were going to show us how to pot one of the cloth ones, because I've never used those. And I'm wondering, when I do other pots, I always put something hard in the bottom, like rocks or broken pots or something like that. Do you need to do that with the cloth pots as well?
You do not need to do that with the cloth pots. They're totally porous, so they drain extremely well. The only thing I would do with the cloth pot is put something underneath it to raise it up off the ground. Especially if your patio or your balcony has any kind of sink to it where water will puddle, you want to get out of that puddle. So just put 2 bricks or put some 2x2s or something under the pot, just lift it up.
Now,
That's
I
a really-
have land and I planted a lot of things, but I'm thinking about doing pots for things because of freezes in the winter. Not a lot of freezes, but you know, some freezing because we're at 2,000 feet in the mountains. And so I was thinking about using the large cloth pots with some of the plants, maybe
Mhm.
small trees and that sort of thing, that need to be brought in the winter.
Absolutely.
So they're lighter. You could, I don't know if I could lift them, but maybe I could put them on a carrier and bring them in or something like that. Do you recommend
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, that's a really great idea. In fact, you know, the fabric pots that we use, the one that Sarah showed earlier, it has handles. And if you do a really light potting soil mix, which is like if you do the one that I do, that soil mix is really light. And you can easily pick up, maybe not one person, but two people can easily pick up a 50-gallon pot and move it around. And that's a great, thank you for pointing that out, Jacqueline. If you're in a cold climate and you want to keep something a little bit more tropical, you can do this. You can put it out in the summer and take it in for the winter. Lots of people do that in colder climates just so you can, you know, grow a lemon tree or grow a moringa tree or, you know, whatever it is you're trying to grow. Does that answer your question, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about how much sun you have to have if you're bringing it in. I guess it depends on the plant.
Depends on the plant. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. All right, let's go with Carolyn.
Hi, thanks. So I did buy some 30-gallon pots, and I put, I have a fig tree that I brought, and I put that in there, and then I have a persimmon tree that I bought at San Gabriel Valley Nursery. So what I've noticed is it gets dry around the edge, and then when I really water it, like I had to kind of move it around to moisten that part, and then it leaked out all over my patio and kind of stained. So one, what should I be doing differently about watering? And two, should I get like a big plastic thing? I do have them up on bricks.
Yeah, if you're worried about the staining, then you gotta put some kind of saucer, put the bricks, and then put the pot on top. That would be the best idea. And thank you, Carolyn, for actually mentioning the trees. I meant to talk about that. So if you're gonna grow trees in a pot, if you're gonna grow perennials in a pot, the fabric pot is really the best option just because you're not gonna get the root circling. If you've ever tried to grow a tree in like a ceramic pot or a plastic pot, over the years, that root circling just gets crazy. You'll get like this thick layer of circled roots at the bottom, and the tree is really not taking any nutrients from the soil because all this root mass is at the bottom. And a lot of cases, if you need to, what people do in those cases is they take the tree out of the pot, they cut the roots off, and they put it back, which is kind of dangerous for the tree. So if you want to grow a tree, I would recommend 25-gallon plus, and use the fabric pot. It'll last you for many years, and the trees will be really healthy in those pots. And yes, the edges will dry out, so don't worry about the edges so much. Worry about the middle. You can use do the same finger check closer to the trunk, check halfway. No need to check the edge. Yeah, the edge is of course going to dry out. Okay, great question. Sarah Jo.
Myself. Hi. I got 3 fruit trees at Sarvodaya last week, and the idea was to keep them in pots. And then I was sort of looking around the garden. This is sort of a question about if I decide that I find a spot. I don't have a lot of like perfect spots anymore in the garden for trees, for things like fruit trees, but I'm trying to find some spots for them. And so the question is this kind of thing of, should I, keep it in the pot, or if I have a space, what do I need to allow for if I'm going to plant? I think these were maybe in the 10 gallons. There was a brown turkey fig, lemon guava, and then I think it's called freedom berry. I wanted to try to either plant the lemon guava or the fig. And can I, maybe in a place in the ground where, I could how to describe to you like how much space there is. It's just, it's sort of on the driveway side. So it can't like go out 10 feet in diameter, but can I control it somewhat? Like you would have to in a pot. So I'm hoping to kind of control a tree in the, that's sort of the question.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, so you definitely have two options here. You can keep it in the pot. That is gonna limit its growth on its own. You'll probably, if you're trying to keep it narrow, you'll probably still need to prune it a little bit. I mean, you're definitely gonna need to prune it over time, but you'll have to prune it less if it's in the pot. If you put it in the ground, you can still keep it narrow, but if it's got soil space, then it's gonna be growing like, especially a figs grow like really, really quickly. So you're gonna have to be more aggressive with the pruning if it's in the ground. So either way,
And when you say more aggressive for a fig, say for example, is there a time of the year, typically, I mean, usually there is, every time I read up about that you would want to do this pruning, and you wouldn't need to do it more than once a year? Like, how do you mean like aggressive? Like, what does that translate to?
With a fig or any tree that's gonna go dormant in the winter, you're gonna do the major pruning in the winter. So you're gonna really cut it back in the winter.
Okay.
And then in the summer, if it's getting in your driveway, then feel free to prune off whatever's in your face. You're just going to end up with this problem where one branch is hitting your car every day, but it has 14 fruit on it, and
yes,
that's going to happen. So
okay, thank you.
All right, Armando, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. So I was wondering, I know you mentioned the next class is going to be on seedlings, I think you said, and planting season, which is not necessarily right now. So I just moved. Would it be wise to plant anything right now on my balcony, or should I wait? And the thing that I was most interested in planting would be probably like a small fruit tree. And I get maybe like 4 hours of direct sunlight a day.
I would advise, because it's August, you're in Claremont, did you say?
I'm in like Sherman Oaks, LA.
Okay. Yeah, I would advise not planting anything this month. It's really, really hot. So I would wait at least until, well, basically just you want to wait until it cools down a little bit before you plant anything else. You could definitely get a pot going with at least some herbs, I would say would be one thing that I might be comfortable with planting right now. So if you want to do a pot that has like garlic chives and oregano and thyme, those are some great easy plants for you to start with, and just get something started for yourself right now. And something that you could, a lot of those kind of things, you put them in the ground and in like 2-3 weeks you can start harvesting. So it's really easy.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Eleanor. Oh, gotta unmute yourself, Eleanor. Okay, I'll give you a second to figure it out. Suraj Patel.
I think Armando and I are on the same exact wavelength. So he took part of my questions. I guess more generally, what should I be looking for? So I'm the one in Claremont, just moved here.
Okay.
Starting to think about planting the garden. Have similarly a west and east facing balcony. And so when I'm looking for plants, do I look for partial sun, partial shade? Like how do I go about that selection process? Particularly for a container garden.
Sorry, what direction did you say your space is pointing?
We have two balconies, both one faces east, one faces west. So
one faces east and one faces west. Okay. So what you need to know about the sunlight in your space is that your east side is morning sun. Okay, so morning sun is soft. It's not a harsh sun. Your west side is like, that's like your 3 p.m. type sun. That sun is very harsh. So what you what you want to do is on your east side, you want to plant things that are a little bit more delicate. And on your west side, you want to plant things that are a little bit stronger, more sturdy. Now, that is going to be slightly difficult for you to figure out in the beginning. If you go to nurseries, if you come to our nursery, we'll obviously be able to help you with what goes well. But you need to look at the season, what grows in the current season, and among those plants, what's hardy and what's delicate. And delicate stuff will go on the east, hardy stuff will go on the west. So to give you an example right now, I don't really suggest you plant too much right now. But those herbs, the oregano and the thyme and all would do really well on the west side. Tomatoes would do fine on the west side. If you wanted to try growing some leafy greens, then I would put them on your east side balcony. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you so much.
Great. Eleanor, you want to try now?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm the one who asked the question about lining pots in gardening cloth. I meant like landscaping cloth, because I've seen in some gardening blogs that lining pots before you plant something with landscaping cloth will help to retain the soil better and also try to provide more moisture for whatever you're planting. So I just want to know your opinion on that.
I have never heard of that, and I don't understand how that would work.
Okay. So just basic is better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how landscape fabric would do anything additional to the pot. So there could be something, but I don't understand it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Michelle P.
Hi, Rishi.
Hi, Michelle.
So I'm curious about the larger containers. I want to do companion planting like you were talking about. So for a 20-gallon container or fabric pot, how many plants would you typically put into one of those?
Okay, at our nursery, I have 15 and we have 30. I don't have a 20.
Okay, so 30. So then 30, a 30-gallon.
So in a 30-gallon, like, again, it's going to vary based on the type of plant that you're putting in there, right? Some plants get really big, some stay small. So I'll give you an example of something you might do for the upcoming winter season. Okay, so in a 30-gallon pot, you could put a perennial or a tree in the middle. So let's say you put a fig tree in the middle of your 30-gallon pot. And then around your tree, so on the edges of the pot, you're going to put maybe some chives. You could put a couple lettuce plants. You could put a kale plant. You could put a broccoli plant, and maybe like one more. So that would be for the winter, which is our upcoming season.
Perfect. And those are all things that I love. So, and now what about one that's a little bit smaller? So the 15-gallon.
The 15-gallon, it doesn't have as much of a surface area on the top, so you're looking probably more at like 3 or 4 plants.
Okay.
Or it could just be like a bed of lettuce, or a bed of arugula. Like the whole plant is just lettuce, and the whole pot is just lettuce and arugula.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, Scott Shapiro.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Hi.
Hi,
I wanted to. Good. How are you? I'm in Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
And so we have a little different growing season than you guys do. And thanks to you, I started a all potting garden about 6 months ago. And so today I wanted to show you a tomato plant because I have a question. I have a question on the finger and soil, how much to water. So I'm
Okay.
gonna try to flip my camera around here real quick. So
Okay.
these are some tomato
Tomatoes.
plants that just started, and they're in. This is, I would say, probably not quite a 5-gallon container. It's just from the gardening center. But
Yeah.
my question is, it always seems dry. I stick my finger in every day, and it seems dry. Yet, can you see the leaves on this? How
Yeah,
they're curling inwards. And
Yeah.
somebody said that that's a sign of not enough water. So I continue to water, but they don't seem, the tomatoes are coming great, but the plants don't look wonderful. So I was just wondering if I'm doing the right thing, or it could be something else.
Okay, so tomato leaves do tend to curl, and that is not actually from lack of water. I don't remember exactly if there's a specific cause, but that's not happening. When the plant is lacking water, it'll wilt, right? The leaves don't grow in a curled shape. So that's not what's happening. You're watering every day, you said?
I water almost every morning, a pretty thorough watering.
Okay.
Because it is dry, I do the finger test, and it's pretty dry to the top, on the top 5 inches or so.
Where in Hawaii are you?
On Maui.
Are you on like
And
a
we're
dry side?
in Kihei side, which is very dry and hot. So that's why I thought one of the reasons I heard was either not enough water, very windy. So there, basically a lack of water was kind of what I've heard. Why they curl like that, but
it's not a lack of water. It could be the wind. What I would suggest is when we say 5-gallon and 10-gallon pots in the gardening world, it's not actually 5 gallons. I don't know who came up with these things, but it's not actually 5 gallons. It's usually like 25% less. Those pots that you're in, they look about 10 gallons. I would say for a tomato plant, you probably want a 15-gallon next time. It's a little bit bigger.
Okay.
It's dry. The pot is drying out every day. It's hot and windy. I'm seeing the wind right now behind you.
Yeah.
And so you do need to water every day. Have you fertilized at all since you started plants in the pot?
Yep, I started at the beginning. I was doing a liquid fertilizer about once a week.
Yeah.
And then I felt like it was just washing through. So I started adding hard crystal fertilizer. I don't know what you would call it. But every 2 or 3 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that.
Okay. So what I would suggest is keep watering every day, but just water the soil. You don't need to water the upper, the plant itself.
Right. I never do. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then go back to a foliar feeding. So spray the leaves with the product I use and which we sell is called Neptune's Harvest. I think if you've taken my class, I've probably recommended it somewhere. Neptune's Harvest fish and seaweed, and just do that every week.
And that's a foliar fertilizer.
It's a foliar, yeah.
Okay. Oh, cool.
Okay, try that.
Yep.
Okay, so Scott brings up.
Can I ask you one quick question on the compost?
Sure.
Because all composts aren't equal.
Right.
I want, again, in this tomato plant, can you see how it's almost like small wood chips are in this?
Yeah.
I was concerned whether it wasn't composted enough, and it's just out of a bag. So that was my question.
It's not composted enough when it's straight out of the bag, but that top part is not really going to compost. You got to look inside the pot to see if it's really composting. Yeah, that surface, because it's drying out from the sun, is never really going to break down.
Right. Okay. Okay. But a general compost bag that you get is going to work with that mix that you said with the cocoa husk and perlite.
Yeah, it's gonna
Okay.
break down. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, Mina Muru.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can.
Hi, thank you so much, Rishi. Um, we planted 2 raised bed gardens made out of redwood. They're 3 by 6 each in our
Okay.
front lawn. We have a very small front lawn, and I did we bought potting soil from Costco, organic potting soil, and then also mixed it in with a lot of compost, a good like 6 inches probably of compost in there as well. Mix it all up, but we pulled the grass up underneath the box because there's nothing on the bottom, so it's cardboard. And then so we pulled up the grass, put cardboard down,
Got it.
watered the cardboard, and then on Craigslist I found free mulch and put that down like a couple of inches, and then put the potting soil in the compost mix. Now
Sounds good.
everything was okay, great. The mulch is eucalyptus, and I don't know if that is interfering with like the health of things, because the plants were doing really well up until like the flowering season, and then I just feel like everything is nothing really like produced. There was very little production of fruit and vegetables, I feel. And the tomato plants are very yellow and wilty, almost dying, and I added fertilizer, compost tea a lot. I'm doing a lot of compost tea. So just wondering.
Interesting. Okay. Couple questions for you. What fertilizer are you adding?
It's mainly compost tea, and then also the Dr. Earth tomato and vegetable and herb. It's like a red bag, Dr. Earth. And I make a tea out of it, and then I pour the water in. Does that make sense?
You make a
Like I'll
tea
make
out of the fertilizer, or you make a tea out of the compost that you're buying?
I've been making a tea out of everything.
Okay. All right. That's just diluting the fertilizer, which is fine. Are you aerating it or anything? You're just mixing. How are you making your tea exactly?
I let it soak for 24 hours in water. And then I water the plants with that water, with the infused water, so to speak.
So you're taking a powdered Dr. Earth and sitting it in water for 24 hours.
Yeah,
Okay.
stirring it.
Don't do that anymore.
Okay.
That's one part of my theory. Okay, so your compost tea is made out of compost. Okay, you take actual compost and not like bagged compost. You can't make compost tea out of bagged compost because
this was homemade.
But you're making homemade compost, and you're making what are you making the tea out of? I'm a little confused.
It's my friend's homemade compost.
And the fertilizer?
And fertilizer, not together, separately.
Separately, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and how are you making the tea with the homemade compost?
Like a cup, like a cup of the compost soaked in. I mix water with that overnight, like 24 hours, and then I water the plants with that.
Okay, so you're doing the same process with compost and with the powdered fertilizer separately.
Yeah. Yes.
And how
At
often are you
different
doing that?
times. Maybe every 2 weeks, every month. Like the fertilizer I've only done once this growing season since March, actually. The compost tea I do every 2 weeks.
Does your friend do that with the compost?
That was her recommendation with the compost tea. That to do a lot of compost tea to try to build soil health.
Okay. Right.
It's all
no, that's compost tea is sound. I'm just I'm gonna recommend you don't do either of those things anymore.
Okay.
Okay. So here's my thoughts. One, when you sit a powdered fertilizer is like very, very strong, right? It has like a lot of nutrients in it. When you put that in water and you let it sit for 24 hours, there's no air, right? So there's a lot of nutrients in water and no air. There's going to be a bloom of of anaerobic bacteria, like stinky bacteria. So probably by the time you spray that water, does it smell bad?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Well, my one thought would be that maybe something like that is happening, and you're
Okay.
spreading anaerobic bacteria all over your plants and the soil. And you know, I would guess I would want to see your friend's compost if you're making compost tea out of it as well. My other thought is your potting soil. Potting soil is already compost. Okay, potting soil is usually like 30% to 50% compost to begin with. Then you added 6 inches more of compost on top of that, right? And you didn't put any soil from the ground in your raised bed.
No.
Okay, so what I think might be happening is compost, when it's just by itself in like large quantities, it holds water like tremendously well. It holds water too well. And so it tends to get kind of soggy, and it'll start to go what's called anaerobic, and it'll get stinky and it'll start rotting a little bit. So what might be happening is just that you're getting some anaerobic buildup in your raised bed, and that can be very damaging to the plant's roots and damaging to the plant's health. So what I would suggest right now and how often are you watering?
I would say every few days. I usually do the finger test.
Do the finger, and does it feel dry when you're doing that?
Yeah. One bed is partially shaded by our tree, and then the other one gets a lot of sun. So the one that's in full sun all the time, I do water it more often, but it feels dry when I put my finger in there.
Okay. This is interesting. It sounds like you're doing almost everything that I would do. Yeah, I would say
Except
just
the
maybe.
tea thing?
Yeah, don't stop doing the tea.
Okay.
And try doing a foliar spray with the fish and seaweed, and see if that helps you. Also, where are you?
South LA.
South LA? Okay.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
Exposition in Western.
and when did you put the garden together?
Just in April.
April. Okay. Yeah, try doing the fish and seaweed, and stop doing all the other fertilizers.
I've been making a DIY kelp spray. But I don't know.
My sense is you're doing all the right stuff. You're maybe just not making it in the best way.
Right. Okay.
Even if you hadn't done any of those things, and you just put the plants in the potting soil and watered it, they should be in decent shape.
Okay.
Okay, so do less.
Even with the eucalyptus mulch? Okay, yeah, that's what it sounds like. Just do less.
Yeah, do less.
Okay.
Maybe doing too much.
Thank you. Okay, sounds good.
All right, I'm gonna take this last question here, and we're gonna call it a day. Viva, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. So you talked a little bit about garden inoculant, and I'm in the Coachella Valley, so our soil is basically sand.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I live in a condo complex, so the landscape crew comes around and trims everything once a month, and I go out with shopping bags and I grab their big pile of all the trimmings and I kind of mulch that in. But
you have container garden or in-ground garden?
So I have both.
Okay.
The container garden, certainly over the summer, I mulch it pretty heavily just to keep the sun from killing everything, you know, because we're at 110, 120 most of the summer.
Ouch, okay.
Yeah, between that and shade cloth.
Yeah.
Although I have noticed that some of the stuff in pots sometimes starts to smell a little forest floor like, which sounds like the anaerobic bacteria.
No, forest floor-like is not anaerobic bacteria. Forest
Okay,
floor
good.
is not is fungus.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because we have a ton of, that's the other thing, we have a ton of fungus in our soil here, which I had no idea about, but like I can't put squash or tomatoes or tomatillos in because they just immediately fungus. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So in terms of a garden inoculant, should I be looking to someone with a garden in my area, so it's going to have a similar sort of soil profile, like it's going to be that similar kind of soil?
That can definitely help. So, you know, if you're looking for a soil inoculant, getting something from someone who's closer to you is better.
Okay.
However, if you can't find something close to you, then getting something rather than nothing is, you know, great too. So, but it sounds like your garden's already been going for quite a while here.
Yeah, I've been going for about 2 years. The second year was great. I've got like these giant earthworms now, like I can barely, you know, get a trowel in to like put something in the ground or even in the pots, and there's just earthworms everywhere, which is great.
Yeah.
But this year there was spider mites, and there was just everything, and fungus everywhere.
Okay, and by fungus you mean like powdery mildew?
Mostly powdery mildew, yeah. And so what I tried for that, which seemed to work pretty well, except it brought other pests, was a mixture of 1 part milk to 2 parts water, and spraying that, and that seemed to work really great. And then the rats came and ate everything.
Because of the milk?
Because of the milk.
Okay.
Because it smelled a little cheesy, I guess.
Okay. There is for powdery mildew, silica as a mineral is really good. You can buy it in the form of potassium silicate.
Okay.
It's a liquid. It's gonna look and taste like, or look and smell like nothing. But you can spray that instead, and it'll have the ingredient that you're trying to get onto the plant without the cheese part of it. And in terms of like it sounds like, so in the curve of a garden, sounds like you're just in that, there's the beginning when you put all this healthy soil and you brought all these plants in, and there's nothing to eat them because nothing's been in your area for a while, right? Like the ecosystem's been dead for quite a while. So you all of a sudden bring these plants. The first year everything goes well, and then the second year things are starting to figure out that, oh, this person's got a garden over here, right? And so now the aphids come in, and the, you know, other spider mites come in, and some other, you know, things are coming to try to eat your plants. So you're in that part of the curve where your pest population is going to go up. What's important to do actually at this part of the curve is not try to kill off those pests with all sorts of sprays and stuff. It's great you can definitely, you know, add things that are gonna, like the potassium silicate, that are gonna make the plants stronger. There's also, we have a product that we use at the farm called Sea Crop, SEA Crop. It's ocean minerals. We have that in our nursery, and that's just, it's like 90 minerals from the ocean. You spray that, it helps the plants kind of build up their body structure. So you can do those kind of things to protect the plants from the insects that are coming in, but you don't want to spray things that are going to kill those insects, because once you start killing those insects, you're losing the food for the predators that are going to follow them. So let a few things, like if you all of a sudden get a bunch of aphids on, you know, some of your plants, I would say just let them be, let the plant go if needed. And and let those attract those ladybugs in, or whatever the predator is in your area. Give them time to find your garden.
Okay.
So yeah, leave some of the insects. You can also put up like especially if you have a small garden, you might not have spots for like birds to come and sit. You can put up perches for birds to come and sit. They'll eat some of the caterpillars and things like that. Add more flowers, plants that have small, like I just planted yarrow at my in-laws, and a yarrow flower, it's like one head, but it has like 200 little flowers in it. So plants like that have lots and lots of flowers will attract all the, the predatory insects and bees and all. So try to get those in your garden. They will help also, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to invite, the ones that have been forgotten for a while.
I have been spraying. So someone not far from me had recommended to help the plants during our crazy, insane summers here, but also helps repel some aphids, is taking aloe barbadensis and like Nepal cactus, either of those, blending them in water, and that the saponins in those will prevent certain types of insects from being like the spider mites and stuff, but will also help the plants kind of just deal with the sun.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, I would definitely. I would definitely try that. That
Okay.
sounds like a really good idea. I know, I've heard of people doing that. I haven't tried it myself, but there is something in the aloe flesh, the inside part, and same with the Nopalis, that is beneficial for plants. A lot of fertilizers, liquid fertilizers, actually incorporate aloe into them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I have started using that, but I don't. At the same time, I don't want to. If I'm feeding a lot of praying mantids, hey, I'm happy to have them come and feast in my garden. So. Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that. You'll get the recording. Just give us a couple days, and that will be sent to you by email. And we will see you next month for the class on seed starting. And I'm gonna try to be in the farm so I can actually show you. Today I'm still away. All right. Have a great evening, and see you next time.